Okay, hello. Good morning.
Hello.
Just a few seconds. People is coming back from the coffee break, and I will introduce you in French first, and I come back to you to launch the session.
Okay, so I'm here, and you can hear me, right?
Sorry?
And you can hear me?
Yes, yes.
Okay, excellent.
It's very good. People is coming. Si vous voulez bien prendre place, que nous allons commencer. Bon, pendant que les retardataires s'installent, je crois que nous allons pouvoir commencer. Alors, nous avons le plaisir d'accueillir par vidéoconférence Werner Rühm. Werner Rühm est le président de la CIPR depuis le mandat qui a commencé en 2021. À ce titre, il a eu le plaisir de lancer le processus de révision des recommandations générales de la CIPR. C'est un processus de longue haleine, hein. Il vient de commencer, mais il va durer une dizaine d'années. C'est un processus qui est très ouvert puisqu'ils sont associés à un certain nombre d'organisations internationales et bien sûr au niveau des États, il est possible de contribuer à ce processus, notamment à travers les sociétés de radioprotection, puisque au sein de l'IRPA, il y a un groupe de travail qui participe au processus de révision avec une contribution qui est apportée par l'IRPA à travers ces sociétés. Voilà, alors Werner va introduire une double session 8 et 9, qui sont dévolues justement à la révision des recommandations de la CIPR et qui seront focalisées sur quelques points clés qui posent question pour la construction d'un nouveau système, aussi bien sur le plan scientifique que sur le plan de la gestion du risque. Werner ne pourra pas rester avec nous. Il a eu beaucoup de réunions. C'est déjà une chance que nous l'ayons en visioconférence, donc il ne pourra pas rester parmi nous pour la suite de la session. Mais il pourra répondre à quelques questions à la fin de son intervention. Il parlera en anglais, mais il est parfaitement compréhensible. J'ajoute qu'à la fin de la double session, il y aura une table ronde avec quelques acteurs français qui pourront réagir sur tout ce processus de révision des recommandations de la CIPR, et ça sera l'occasion d'entamer un débat avec la salle. Voilà. Dear Werner, on behalf of the SFRP, the French Society of Radiation Protection, I have the honor and the pleasure to welcome you in our Congress today. Unfortunately, you are not physically present, but we thank you very much to take on your time and to be through the video to participate in this session. Your presentation will be the starting point for a double session, session 8 and 9, devoted to the process on revision of the ICRP recommendation. Your presentation will explain this process and provide us about a few information related to ICRP. you are the chair of ICRP, and as such, you are driving the process of revision of the general recommendation. I said to the colleagues that it is a very open process, and everybody can participate, and it is a good opportunity. I will stop to speak and give you the floor for 20-25 minutes, and just after we will have time for a few questions and answers. You have the floor. Thank you.
Well, thank you very much for inviting me to give this presentation today, and please apologize that I'm not able to speak in French. So I have to speak in English here. And what I will do now is to introduce to you the next steps in advancing the system of radiological protection. And for this, I'm sharing my screen now, and hopefully it should start now.
We can see, yes, now it is very...
Okay, so thank you very much again. Now, before coming to the review process, very briefly, please let me introduce to you the International Commission on Radiological Protection, which was founded in 1928, quite a while ago. Our purpose is to provide independent recommendations and guidance on RP, on radiological protection. So just guidance. We do not formulate standards or regulations. Obviously, this is within the responsibility of other national and international organizations. And the recommendations we are developing, they are based on scientific evidence. But not only, it goes beyond science, it also includes social values and practical experience. The mission behind, and this is quite important to have this always in mind, we want to contribute to an appropriate level of protection against the detrimental effects of ionizing radiation. And we know that there are detrimental effects, but at the same time, we do not want to unduly limit the benefits associated with the use of radiation. And there are many, many positive applications of ionizing radiation. Just think of medical applications. I mean, it's obvious. So we have to find a balance, a trade-off between the positive effects and the detrimental effects. Our membership includes volunteers. So all of our members are volunteers. They are not paid by ICRP, and they are selected based on their competence and experience. They do not represent their country, for example. They do not represent their organization. They are working as individuals to contribute to the mission of ICRP. Finally, it's important to emphasize that ICRP is an NGO, a non-governmental organization. It's a charity. So we rely on donations. So if you don't know what to do with your money, you may donate a part of it at least to ICRP. And the obvious advantage is that we are independent. So we do not represent the government, no country, and so on. Now, if you look at our membership, it spreads all over the world, about 360 members from almost 50 countries. And this is important that we cover all regions of the world, because the recommendations developed by ICRP are meant to be used all over the world. There are some clusters. Europe is one cluster. France, for example, I don't know whether you see my cursor here. France with 33 members is a cluster in Europe. We have other areas where we are not so, where we could do better in terms of membership. Africa, for example, South America. But at least I think it's obvious from the map that we do cover most regions of the world in one way or the other. The governance, well, the main commission of the ICRP is the main deciding body, supported by the scientific secretariat. And currently we have 4 standing committees. I will come to them later. And each of the committees, and sometimes even the main commission occasionally, run task groups, and within the task groups, all the work is being done. So the development of reports, for example. This is the current main commission. We have a new vice chair since a couple of days, Simon Boufler from the UK. We have two members from France, Dominique Laurier and Thierry Schneider. This is the scientific secretariat. We have Chris Clements as the scientific secretary. We have two assistant scientific secretaries. They are working in Canada, where the office is based, but they are paid from their home institution, which is a generous in-kind support of ICRP, one from Japan, one from South Korea. And we have a staff dealing with administration, with stakeholder engagement, communication, and with social media. More recently, we have also a number of technical secretaries, 8 technical secretaries. They are working from their home institution, from their home countries, but their employer allows them to work part-time for ICRP, let's say 1 day a week or 2 days a week. This is our secretariat. Now let me come to the committees very briefly. Committee 1 is chaired by Dominique Laurier from your country, from France. They consider the effects of radiation action on various levels of organization, from the subcellular to population and even ecosystem levels. Committee 2 is on radiation doses. They develop dosimetric methodology for both the assessment of internal and external radiation exposures. This committee is chaired by François Bauchu. Sounds French, but he is from Switzerland. Committee 3, RP in medicine, chaired by Kimberly Applegate from the US. They address protection of individuals and unborn children when ionizing radiation is used in medical applications. And finally, Committee 4, dealing with the applications of the system. They provide, as I said, advice on the application of the Commission's recommendation. And this is chaired by Thierry Schneider, again from France. And we have Jean-François Lecomte, who is a C4 emeritus member. Well, these are the active task groups at the moment. That's a huge list, more than 30 active task groups. This is an all-time high. Never before in the history of ICRP there were so many active task groups. I will come to the list at the end of my presentation again. If you're interested, of course, in more details, you can visit the website of ICRP. I think it's important to mention and stress that if we establish a new task group, then this is an open process. So we will issue a call on the website, and then anyone who feels he or she could contribute to the specific topic of a specific task group can apply. And then the membership of the task group is finally decided, selected based on the expertise needed to do the work the task group was meant to do. So it's an open call. Now, as we are now approaching our review of the system, this is a huge project, and we feel that this goes way beyond what ICRP can do. We think really that this should be a joint international effort. And for this, it's important that we have already some relationships with a number of international organizations who are interested in radiological protection. This is the list again, about I think 30 or so. Probably too small, but it's listed on our website. And this is important. And of course, some of the major players are there. IRPA, you already mentioned IRPA, is of course among them. UNSCARE, the United Nations Scientific Committee on the Effects of Atomic Radiation, WHO, the World Health Organization, and many more. And this is important because we feel the project to review the system should be a joint international effort of the whole community, the international community working in RP, in radiological protection. Now the publications, I will already mention here the previous general recommendations, which are laid down in publication 103, published now 16 years ago already. But we have many more publications on specific aspects of RP. And I'm very proud to mention that most of those reports are freely available on the website of ICRP, except for the most recent ones. There is an embargo period of 2 years, but the rest of the ICRP reports are can be downloaded for free. A more recent initiative of ICRP is the mentorship program. We understand that we should really do what we can to get young scientists into our field. So we would like to engage university students, early career professional scientists in ICRP task groups, and those who are interested may come from any organization. They are assigned specific roles within a task group, and they are also assigned a senior member of a task group, a mentor, who is responsible to provide guidance to the new members. So if any one of you is interested to join ICRP, and if you are still young, you may become a Mentee member, and then you are a member of the ICRP family. And we have one, for example, Aidana Amarenova from TG121, who is from France. If there are mentorship opportunities, they are announced on the website. This was a screenshot from last week. Too small now, but what you will find is you will find the task group, which has an open call, the name of the potential mentor within the task group, the task role, the task or the role of a mentee, and the deadline. And currently, I think there is one still open until June 16 in TG103. So it's worth to visit the website regularly, because as soon as a new opportunity becomes available, we announce this on the website, and then you may apply. Currently, we have more than 40 mentees. Now, let me come to the topic of my talk today, the systems review. And Jean-François, you already mentioned, it's not a project which may take 10 days or 10 months. It may take longer. That's why it's written here the next decade. So it's a big project. And the project is to review publication 103. And in doing so, the idea was that we have to identify basic open questions, which we have to answer if we want to review and revise possibly the general recommendations. And the first step, the first phase, was that we as ICRP wanted to stimulate the discussion among the community worldwide, all over the world. And for this, already the previous main commission started thinking about it. And the reflections of the previous recommendations are summarized in this paper, Keeping the ICRP Recommendations Fit for Purpose, the Fit for Purpose paper. It's an open access paper where the previous main commissions thought about any areas that potentially would require review. It's an open access paper. If you are interested, you can download it from the website of ICRP or from the Journal of Radiological Protection. Now, very briefly, what were the first ideas of the main commission, topics which might require review? For example, the classification of effects. We have now the classification, we have stochastic effects and tissue reactions. And one may have to think whether this is still appropriate. Reformulation of the detriment Is it already time to include non-cancer diseases in calculating detriment? Individual variation in response to radiation exposure, a very hot topic, which is mentioned many times, and there are many more. For example, how to integrate protection of people and the environment in a consistent manner, for example. Clarification of exposure situations is another hot topic, which comes up many times when we talked and listened to others, what they wanted to see, what we should think about, and many things more. So if you are interested, just download the paper. And it was meant to stimulate the discussion on this process. Well, then after that, we thought we should develop a twin paper, a second paper, and this should focus now on the areas of research to support the system of radiological protection. I mean, if we are in the process to review and revise the system, there may be research topics which would help us if there is research done on those topics. And this is by Dominique Laurier and co-workers. Again, this is an open access paper published in this case in Radiation and Environmental Biophysics. So if you are interested, just download the paper. To give you an idea what we thought about what could be helpful, what kind of research could be helpful now in our process to review the system, this would be short and midterm research, but we also added long-term research, which may even go beyond our current review process. So for radiation risk assessment, just to give you an example, stochastic effects and radiation detriment. And this gives you here some ideas. I guess most of you understand and know how detriment is calculated in the system of radiation protection of ICRP. For example, the cancer risk is a major topic. And for this, to calculating detriment, we need the most recent and most up-to-date cancer risk models to calculate tissue weighting factors. So clearly, the big radioepidemiological studies which inform us on those models must continue. For example, the lifespan study of atomic bomb survivors. Other examples are dose rate effects of cancer. Impact of non-radiation factors in detriment calculation. If you look how detriment is calculated, then, for example, a lethality factor is used, and we have to think about and check whether this is still up to date, and we feel probably not, that we feel that more science, more research could enhance or reduce the uncertainties perhaps of this factor. And there are other factors in this regard. I already mentioned the diseases of the circulatory system and how it impacts radiation detriment. For this, if we want to do that, we need, for example, to know about the shape of the dose response of this endpoint. And clearly, there is more research needed to inform us. Radiation effects from in utero exposures, hereditary effects. There are many more where we would really like to see more research in Europe, for example. And I know that the Pianoforte Consortium, they very carefully read this paper when they started setting their priorities. On the long term, this may go beyond the current process to review the system. Just I mentioned one, which is, as far as I know, also of interest in France, the effects of combined exposures. We know that what ionizing radiation is doing. We have a lot of knowledge. But what if its combined exposure is combined with other chemicals, for example? And then we have quite almost no knowledge about that, maybe except for radon and smoking. That's an example where we have some knowledge. But so on a very long term, there could be a lot of more research done in this respect. As far as the symmetry is concerned, short and midterm, just let me mention more data could be helpful on relative biological effectiveness of the different radiation types, different radiation qualities. On the long term, Just one example, biokinetic models in human tissues. You may know that ICRP has developed a lot of biokinetic reference models for intake of radionuclides. But what if you have a patient where the metabolism of a certain element or radionuclide is disturbed due to the disease? Then, of course, those biokinetic models can no more be used. And so there is a lot to do in this respect. This goes already a little bit towards individualization. I'll come to that in a minute. And research to support the application and implementation of the system. I just want to highlight the tremendous and extremely fast developments, technological developments in medical applications. And we really need research to understand what do those developments mean for radiation protection. Are they relevant? Are there problems? Think of artificial intelligence for example, in imaging. So what does this mean for RP? And here is also a lot of research needed, I think, that we understand what the implications are for the system. And many more. So if you are interested, just download the paper. This was to stimulate the discussion. Okay, stimulating discussions is fine, but this doesn't help us much as ICRP, because in the end, we need feedback. We need to listen, and we need to know what the rest of the world is thinking. And so one option, the first option, I would say, was that we offered to provide feedback during about 1.5 years ago on our digital workshop. It was a digital workshop on the future of RP. It was digital because of the pandemic, of course, where we presented about 20 live presentations and about 50 on-demand presentations. And then this was a platform for the international community to discuss with us, with ICRP. It was indeed an international audience from all over the world, from almost 100 countries. We had almost 1,500 registrations, which told us that really this topic is of interest for the community. And we collected the feedback, and we summarized this in another paper, an open access paper again. If you are interested, go to the website of the ICRP or the journal, download the paper, and then you get a first idea about the feedback on the ideas laid down in the first paper, the Fit for Purpose paper of ICRP. And just to give you an idea what was discussed, of course, the science behind the system was discussed both in terms of risk assessment, but also in terms of dosimetry, various applications of radiation technologies, of course, but also communication, education and training, ethics was discussed, and also the role of uncertainties, for example. And some more. I just want to highlight one bullet point. It was quite interesting for me, at least, that also the interaction of ICRP with other international organizations was debated. And maybe you saw that just yesterday there was a webinar of ICRP together with the Swedish SSM, where we exactly discussed the role of ICRP in the process, given that there are so many other international organizations with interest in RP. So if you are interested, just download the paper. So this was the situation a couple of months ago. We had the Fit for Purpose paper. We had the feedback during the digital workshop, and we had the areas of research paper. Again, we need more feedback. We felt we needed more feedback, and last autumn at the European Radiation Protection Week, we got the chance by the organizers to organize a satellite workshop. And this satellite workshop was with focus on research priorities. So here we asked explicitly for feedback to the second paper, the areas of research paper. And currently we are almost finished. Currently we are almost finished in summarizing the feedback. And there will be another open access papers soon. By the way, on the occasion of this Radiation Protection Week, we also organized a meeting with all the organizations on the list I showed before, where we have special relationships, and we discussed the priorities of the review process we had in mind so far. And interestingly, it seemed, at least to me, pretty clear that it seemed that based on the feedback we got from those international organizations, that most of the topics have already been included in our ICRP list of building blocks of open questions. So this was quite reassuring. And so after this, and also after the Vancouver symposium in November, we felt that the first phase now of the journey towards the review and revision of the system of radiological protection has come to an end. And this first phase was that we wanted to publish our ideas, the ICRP ideas, and discuss those ideas with the international community to stimulate discussion and collect feedback. So this first phase has come to an end, actually. That's our view. Of course, if there are still bright ideas, if you have brilliant ideas, please let us know. I mean, we continue to listen, of course. And now let me come to the list of task groups. This is now again the list of task groups I showed before, but now some of those task groups are shown in blue, bold blue. And those task groups are task groups where we feel which already address those building blocks, those open questions we have identified together with the community. And again, it's quite a number of open issues. Just let me mention task group 121, offspring and next generations. So we have to review the current evidence now and whether there is any need to change what has been written down in publication 103. Or detriment calculation for cancer. I already mentioned this before, and it's obvious that we have to think about it. We also have to think about the principles of justification of our principles and also go back to TG 114, reasonableness, tolerability, so more the conceptual questions. We have to think about the basis behind our system, really. Exposure situations and categories of exposure, a lot of open questions came from the community, and we have to think about how to clarify this and how to improve this in the next recommendations. I also want to highlight TG 111, which is on the scientific basis of individual response to radiation, because this is a hot topic, individualization of RP. And the most recent task group, which was just decided upon at the last main commission meeting, is TG 128, individualization and stratification of radiological protection. So this goes now beyond, and this task group should start thinking if there is any possibility to individualize or stratify. What would that mean for RP? Because it's not so straightforward. I mean, it's easy to recommend that we should individualize RP, but it could easily be that a lot of open questions come up, legal questions, ethical questions, questions of practicability. We cannot introduce an individual dose limit for every worker, every single worker, and the system will not no more be practicable. So we really have to think very, very carefully about the consequences if we think we should go towards some kind of individualization or stratification. On the other hand, there is an urgent need or request from the medical area, from patients. They ask those questions. What is my individual risk, for example? So a lot of topics to be done. Some of the topics we have identified are already addressed by existing and rather new task groups. And I just want to mention that, for example, TG 127 is chaired by Yann Villaron from France, 123 by Ludovic Vaillant from France. So Ludovic also co-chairs TG 122. We have Dominique Laurier co-chairing TG 119, on diseases of the circulatory system. Again, a hot topic where we are in close contact, by the way, with UNSCARE. We have TG114, co-chaired by Thierry Schneider. We have TG99, chaired by Jacqueline Garnier-Laplace and co-chaired by Christelle Adam-Guillermin. And finally, we have TG95, chaired by François Paquet. So this, I couldn't resist to show you this list in that way because it demonstrates that ICRP benefits from a lot of experience and a lot of efforts from your country, from France. Well, finally, let me highlight a recent initiative of ICRP, which was announced at the last symposium in Vancouver in Canada. It's the so-called Vancouver Call for Action. We, as the main commission, noted and got the impression that there is, in general, worldwide, not in all countries, but in many, many countries, a lack of support for research, education, and training in radiological protection. And because of this, we announced the call, and just 3 or 4 weeks ago, the corresponding paper manuscript was published in Radiation and Environmental Biophysics. Again, open access. Please go to the website or to ICRP or to the journal and download the paper and start thinking about what this means for your country or for your area. So what's next now? Well, still there will be opportunity to provide feedback, and there will be the next opportunity to get an idea what ICRP and the task groups of ICRP are now currently doing, based on the fact that we have the review and revision of the system now launched and the project is ongoing. Well, the next possibility is the next symposium, the next international symposium organized by ICRP. This will take place in November, early November in Tokyo, in Japan. And I really hope to welcome you all as you are sitting in your audience in Tokyo and discuss with you the current work of ICRP, the current work of our task groups on our way, on the journey towards the revision, review and revision of the system of radiological protection. So thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Werner, for this clear and complete presentation of the process. This process is now fully launched. There are a lot of topics on the table. Hard work is before us. You show that the process is very open through workshops, through the participation of international organizations. Thank you for showing that France is fully involved in the work through the working groups. We are also represented in the IRPA working group devoted to the process of revision of recommendation. Thank you for that. Now I will open the door for some questions. Vous pouvez poser vos questions en français ou en anglais. Pour les questions, je m'efforcerai de les traduire. Je ne traduirai pas les réponses, ce serait trop long, mais je peux traduire éventuellement les questions. Mais sinon, vous pouvez les poser aussi en anglais. Donc, la parole est à la salle si vous voulez poser quelques questions à Werner Rühm. Le processus est très clair, c'est ça? I will start with a question. As I said, the process will take some time, and we have a lot of issues to discuss, and with a lot of people involved. For you, how many years this process will take? Can we expect a new recommendation for the 100th anniversary of ICRP, or perhaps it will be a little bit longer? What is your impression?
Well, I will not promise anything here. And actually, initially, when we started or thought about the process, we thought it would be nice to have it at the 100 years anniversary. But to be honest, I would expect that this may take a little bit longer. But it depends. I mean, it's an open process now. The task groups have now started working on many of those open questions, and I'm pretty sure we need more task groups in the upcoming, let's say, 2 or 3 years. And then they have to work. And then once we get a first feeling what the outcome is of those task groups, then probably I could give you a better answer, because then we'll get a feeling whether maybe there is nothing to change. Maybe we have to change a lot. I mean, that's an open process. The important thing for me is that all the questions are now on the table, even if you don't like them. Yeah. So there are many questions on the table, and we really have to seriously think about them. And it's open. No promise from my side, no number.
Est-ce qu'il y a une question de la salle? Perhaps one other. As you said, there is a lot of issues on the table, and from scientific aspects and from the management of the risk and so on, dosimetry and so on, what could be the result? I mean, it will be a revolution of the system or just an evolution?
Well, if I'm listening to the feedback we got so far, one of the major take-home messages was always the system is robust and it works in practice. So the system is not bad. And I think it's wise to be very careful in thinking about changes. I mean, if the science is clear, if the scientific evidence for a change is clear, then we have to think about the changes. But of course, in the end, a change must be justified. In the end, a change must improve radiological protection, and it must not compromise the application of the system. So I used to say that let's just assume we have a system which is perfectly matches with the current scientific evidence, all this individualization stuff and so on and so forth, perfect. But if in the end it turns out it becomes way too complicated, and if it's no more applicable and you cannot explain it, then we did a bad job, because in the end we want to have a product which is useful all over the world. So it's a balance. It's a balance. But the basic message from all the organizations currently, it's working. So it's a successful. And if you look, for example, at annual effective doses in various countries in various occupations over the decades, it decreased. And this has to do with the fact that the system works, with the principles, not only with the dose limits, but also with the optimization principle and so on and so forth. So we must be very careful if we go for a change. That's the message. And we will.
Yes, you are right. The system is robust. Some aspect needs certainly to be more explained, but it works. Yes.
Yes. A question.
Yes, please.
Yeah. So, Carol Roos from ASN. Thank you for your presentation. As you know, ICRP recommendations are very important for a regulatory body, and the assessment, the impact of the change are very important and have to be assessed in. And I would like to know if ICRP will assess the impact of the regulation on regarding impact on regulatory frameworks. So this is my question.
Yes, of course. I mean, the impact of any change is extremely important, and we need an impact assessment. And I'm not so sure whether ICRP can do that alone. for example, what you mentioned on regulations, but we are in close contact with HERCA, for example, or with NEA, with NEA of OECD. So those are organizations where I feel that in the second phase, once we get the first idea what might change, those organizations could embark on the process and help us clarifying the impact. And it has also to do with other areas, not just regulations, but I remember when we talked about the new dose limits, dose quantities, then Eurodose started a working group thinking about the impact in practice. But this could have been done earlier, before those new things were introduced. So our idea is that later in the phase of the review and of the system, we will focus more on the impact before we have the final product, that we already get an idea.
Okay, thank you. Thank you.
Merci.
It's very important for the regulator. Thank you.
Yeah.
Merci bien. Une dernière question, last one.
Yeah, thank you, Werner, for Thierry Schneider speaking. Just to continue on your response to this question, I can take my hat of chair of CRPPH at NEA, and this is clearly one topic that we address with regard to the impact assessment of the implication of the revision of the recommendation, and for sure that will be done in interaction with ICRP, and this is something that maybe I think IRPA has also in mind some element with regard to that. So we will, all the organization in interaction with ICRP will contribute to evaluate this element, and that will be useful. And as far as Committee 4 is concerned, this is clearly one issue that we have in mind.
Thank you, merci. S'il n'y a pas d'autres questions, time is running, and so we are coming to the end of this introduction. It was a good introduction, your presentation, for our session, and let me thank you again very warmly to be among us through the video. Thank you very much, Werner, and good luck for the vast project, the vast process of revising the ICRP recommendation. Thank you very much.
Well, thank you also. And I really wished I could be with you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye. Merci. Donc, je vais appeler les présidents des sessions, de la prochaine session pour venir prendre la suite.